And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a look at the interactions we can add to our buttons. So if I was to right click on this button now, you should be able to see we have these 4 options down the bottom. Edit interactions, copy interactions, paste interactions, and delete interactions. So this interactions option can come in quite handy. And I'm just going to show you a small example of how it can be used. It will be up to you to kind of take what I show you and expand on it. Okay, for now I'm going to click off this menu. And what we're going to do, we're going to add some text on top of our buttons. So let's click on this image first. So this is Freegan Alf. So I'm going to add a piece of text. Just going to drag this title free piece of text onto the screen. I'm going to double click to edit. And I'm going to write Alf. I'm going to center align it. I'm going to use that Lato font once again. I'm going to make it bold. I'm going to make it the same yellow that we keep using. And let's change the size of this to 24. Again, a little bit of guesswork there, but we can always come back to it and change that size once again. And I'm going to put a new line in underneath, and I'm going to write, I'm going to put it in square brackets actually. I'm going to put click to watch video. And then I want this text to be quite a bit smaller, so I'm going to select it. I'm going to take my size down to 14. Okay, that didn't work. Try 13. Okay, let's try clicking OK and see what happens. Nope, for some reason that is massive. Sometimes Klynt does do things like this. If that happens, we can just double click on it again. And let's try once more. Okay, so make it 1 point, it goes tiny. Let's try 14 once again. Okay, that's better. And I'm going to make it white. And let's click OK. Okay, and there we have our text. So I want to position this basically over the top of my button. And that click to watch video text is still a bit big, so I'm going to double click in there again. And I'm going to see if I can make that smaller. So let's go for 12. Okay, still a little bit big. I want it to fit within that circle basically. So let's try 11. Okay, that'll do. Just going to raise it up a little bit. I'm going to make my box smaller. Okay, great. Again, and I know this gets a little bit repetitive and we're going over the same things again, but I just want to get it into your head that when you're working in Klynt, you have to continuously be thinking about your responsive settings. So we've added this piece of text. I go over to my responsive settings once again. Everything I've put on my page so far has been of proportional size. So I'm going to do that once again with this piece of text. And again, we haven't locked anything to the side, so I'm going to untick all of these lock boxes. And let's just change my center Y to 80. Next, I want to create text exactly the same as this for my other 2 buttons. And to do that, I could go drag the text element in again and change the styles. But I'm going to show you 2 other ways you can do that in Klynt. So the first thing we can do is I can come down to my text down here. Oh, before I do this, actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give this a label. So in my text properties on the right-hand side, I'm going to give this the label Alf label. And when we go back to our interactions in a minute, you'll see how important these labels will be. You have to know which piece of text you're working on. Okay, so now I'm going to go back into my timeline. I'm going to do a right click and I'm going to say duplicate. And you should be able to see in my timeline at the end, I get a duplicate copy of this text element. And what I can do, I can click on the plus in my top layer doesn't have to be in the top layer, it can be in any of the layers, but I want this layer to go above the layer I've just created. So I'm going to click on this plus, I'm going to drag my element onto that layer, make sure it starts at the right point. So now with that element in place, I can click on it in the canvas and I can use my arrow keys to shuffle it across. If you hold shift and you hit arrow, it goes a lot quicker. Okay, so let's get that in position. And now we just need to change the text. So first I'm going to change the label. So this is Ash, so I'm going to change this to Ash label. And then I'm going to double click on the text. I'm going to change this from Alf to Ash and click OK. So now I need to do it for my final button, my Bob button. So once again, I could right click and I could duplicate, but let's just copy just to show you how that works as well. So I'm going to right click and copy. And then I'm going to go and create a new layer. And then I'm going to come into that layer and do a right click and paste. So it works pretty much the same way as duplicating. Okay, so next we have to repeat the process we've just done with that Ash label. So let's select our new layer, move it across. Let's double click in it to change what it says. Okay, not our Bob. Click OK, and let's change our label as well. Okay, and what we haven't done when we've duplicated or copied our elements is we haven't gone back to our responsive settings, because these should have copied over as well. And when you move your element, these center X and center Y positions should adjust accordingly. Okay, let's do a save. And now we're going to do something a little bit different. And what we're going to do, we're now going to go through our layers and we're going to go into styles and we're going to set the opacity to 0. So we're just doing this for the text. And the reason we're doing this is because we want our audience to be able to interact with these buttons. And what we want them to be able to do is hover over the button and have this text appear. So it tells them a little bit more about the characters. Okay, so now I've basically made my text invisible. So if I was to run this sequence at the moment, that text wouldn't be seen. But what we're going to do, we're going to now select the buttons and we're going to do a right click and we're going to edit interactions. So I want to create a rollover interaction, and a rollover is basically just putting your mouse over an element. So I'm going to select the rollover element here. The first thing I want to do is change the opacity of the background image. So we've got this element, style, opacity, and let's take the value down to 50. And then I'm going to click on this little link underneath this element that says add. And I'm going to select my Alf label and I'm going to set the opacity for that to be 100. So basically what we've done here is we're telling Klynt that when our viewer puts his mouse over this element, we want the opacity to fade down to 50 and the opacity of our labels to raise up to 100. So the button's going to kind of fade out as the text fades in. And we could preview that now, but let's just save and close that. And then what we're going to do, we're going to click on our button once again, and again I'm going to do a right click, and I'm going to say this time copy interactions. So I'm going to copy the interactions from that first button onto my second one. So I've selected my second button, I'm going to right click and I'm going to say paste interactions, and let's do it for the third one as well. Paste interactions. Okay, so even though I've copied those interactions across, don't assume they'll just work. Let's go in and take a look. So to look at your interactions, if you put your mouse over that button again, you can now see this little lightning bolt in the bottom right hand corner. If I click on that, it opens up the interactions tab for me. And we can see our two interactions here. So the only thing we need to change in here, the top one will always be the same because it's always this element. But the bottom one, which is affecting our text, our labels, we have to change it to make sure it relates to the right one. So we don't want it to be Alf this time, we want it to be Ash. So I'm going to change this to the Ash label and click Save and Close. So let's do the same over here with our final button. I'm going to click on the lightning bolt. I'm going to change it from being the Alf label to the Bob label. And let's save and close. Okay, so let's see how that looks. So I'm going to save our project and I'm going to run the sequence from the start. So once again, our background video is playing. Now if I take my cursor and I hover it over the buttons, you should be able to see that text appears. So we've got Alf, click to watch video. And again, the button fades out. Same over here. Same over here. And once again, I've shown you a really basic example of how these interactions can work, just to introduce you to the functionality. You can start to think about how you can take these interactions and use them to create more interesting functionality in your documentary.